Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to talk about user administration. So the user administration itself tells us managing, deleting, creating, modifying the user accounts. So first of all, before discussing about the user administration, why we need to create users or why we need to delete users? First of all, before deleting or modifying it, first of all, what is the reason for creating user accounts? See, generally, if we take an example, in our personal laptop, we create a user account. So whoever using the laptop, we just log in with the administrator account, or maybe we create one or two user accounts to log in. Let's say suppose if we want to give that laptop to our siblings like brother, sister, or our friend. So we don't create any user account. We just give it to them so that they will log in with the administrator or whatever the account which we were using. But this is not the same case in the real-time environment with the servers. The laptop is just a personal machine, but whereas the server is going to serve the critical applications. So we need to create user accounts. So let me explain in a detailed way. So if you see this diagram, there is one Linux machine which may be running with some applications, or maybe it may run with the database. By default, whenever we install a Linux operating system, we get a root account as an administrator account. So apart from that, we don't see any user accounts. So this Linux machine needs to be accessed by Linux team. There may be multiple members who are working as a Linux team who are managing that server. So they need to log in and managing that operating system, or application team want to install the application inside this Linux machine, or it may be database server. So database team want to log into that machine and install the database inside the Linux machine. So there multiple logins are required to this server from the multiple persons. So we cannot share root credentials, which is administrator credentials, to each and every member. Why we should not share it? Why? Because we don't want everyone should have an admin privileges. That is one of the reason. And second thing is we cannot monitor what each user is doing. So we cannot track each user is going to do inside that machine. So that's why we need to create a separate individual user accounts to each and every person. Let's say for Linux team, whoever logging into the machine and managing the operating system needs to have user credentials for each and every member should be created inside the server. Same way, application team also should have user credentials should be created for each and every member from their team. Same way, database team, if it is a database server, so database team should also have user credentials should be created inside the server. So that is the reason we need to create user accounts inside the Linux machine. That's why we need to learn user administration. So how to create user accounts, how to delete user accounts, and how to manage them. All these things we will learn in this module. Now, to work on this user administration, we need to use multiple commands like user add or add user commands to create user accounts, and user mod to modify whatever the settings has been assigned to the user, and user del is to remove the user accounts, and password command is to assign a password to the user. And these are the configuration files, like whenever we create a user account backend, it will store inside the configuration files. So these are the configuration files: etc password, etc shadow, etc group. So these are the important configuration files for the user management. And whenever we try to create a user account, we can use command called user add or add user. But why we have two commands? Here in Linux we have many flavors like Red Hat, CentOS, Ubuntu, Debian. So user add command will work inside the Red Hat, CentOS, or Amazon Linux operating kind of systems, and add user will work in the Ubuntu. In Ubuntu, user add command will also work, but it will not create the home directory for the user account. That is the reason for Ubuntu better go with the add user command. If it is a Red Hat Linux or CentOS, then better go with the user add command to create a user account. So whenever we create a user, we just execute a command called user add and the username, the user will be created. But back end lot of things will happen. Like whenever we create a user, for that user, one unique ID will be assigned, which is called as a UID. And for the same user, one group ID will be assigned. Along with that, the home directory gets created under the slash home. This is nothing like in Windows, in our laptop, whenever we create a user, just we can go and see inside the C drive users directory, then we can see all the folders of the users which we create inside our laptop. Same way here, whenever we create a user account, by default the user directories will be created inside the slash home. And the etc password file, this is the configuration file for the users. All the information of the user account will be stored inside the etc password. And the etc group, so this is a configuration file to store the groups. So whenever we create a user account, automatically background it will create a group with the username. So whatever the name we are giving to the username, with the same name the group will also get created. And finally it will assign the shell also. So these many things will happen in the background whenever we just execute a command called user add and username. Now, before creating the user account, we should know how many types of user accounts are available inside the Linux operating systems. We have total 3 types of user accounts. One is super user, or we call it as a root user, which is nothing but an administrator user. In Windows also, whenever we install operating system, we can see by default administrator account. The same way in Linux operating systems, we see root account. And another accounts are called system users. So system users are nothing but the application users. For example, in Linux operating system, whenever we install any HTTP service, let's say it's a web server, or we install NFS package, or we install FTP package. So these are all the applications which we install. Then automatically one user account will get created along with this software. So these are called as a system users. So we don't create it manually with the user command, but some software packages will be there in the Linux operating system. So whenever we install those packages, these system users will get created automatically. And normal users. So normal users are the users which we create with the root account. Means you should be root account to create a user account. A normal user account cannot able to create another user account. Only you should have a root privileges to create a user account. And here, if you see for normal users, whenever the user account gets created, by default it assigns one UID to that user. So for normal users, that UID will start from 1000. If I create the first time I am creating a user account, then it will allocate 1000 as a UID. If I create another user account, then it will assign 1001. The same way it will keep on assign the next number to the each and every user account. Why we are using, edit this, why it's starting with the 1000? Why not it is not starting with the 1? Why? Because the OS is reserved from 0 to 999 UIDs are reserved for the system users. So just now we discussed about system users. So whenever the any application is getting installed and it is creating a user account, then it will assign a UID from this reserved UIDs, which is 0 to 999. And by default the UID 0 is assigned to the root user account. So whenever we install operating system, Linux operating system, by default we see root, and that root is occupied with the 0, and then it starts from 1 to 999. UID is reserved for the system's users. So whenever any application is getting installed, then it will assign from this reserved UIDs. So this is about the user administration introduction. In the next video, I will show you how to create these user accounts and how to play with these users. We'll see in the next video. Bye for now.